you know, having their body release insulin. Does anybody know where your body releases insulin from? Pancreas, right? You know what's interesting about the pancreas?
I should know.
Guess how much % of your pancreas's job is to regulate blood sugar? It's 2%. So your pancreas' job is actually more so for digestion and enzyme production and stuff like that. But the insulin and glucagon that can come from our pancreas helps regulate our blood sugar. So this gives ourselves the satisfactory. It brings those hormone, the blood sugar levels down. It also stimulates the satisfactory hormone leptin to be released. But this is where we all get caught up. When insulin is in our bloodstream, our body is not going to be able to burn fat as fuel. And in fact, our body is actually storing some fat as fuel. So that's why a lot of people just try to go, oh, how can I lose fat? Well, I need to not have any insulin coursing through my bloodstream. Well, how do I influence insulin? I don't eat any carbohydrates, right? So that's why low carbohydrate diets can work. Do they work long term? They can if you can stick with it. And this is kind of a side note, but what I want us all to understand is, can you go low carb? Do you want to go low carb until you die? Anybody want to do that? Does that sound like that's part of your lifestyle that you'd be able to sustain for the rest of your life? No. So then, are you trying to lose weight for a specific date and then just gain it all back again? Anybody trying to do that? You're happy where you are, you just want to maybe cut up a little bit and then come back up to where you are? No? Okay. So then we need to start thinking in terms of decisions that we can make that are sustainable. The question we have to ask with any diet, because all diets work, but we have to ask, can I sustain this until I die? Okay, if the answer is no, then probably don't start, because A, at some point you're going to get frustrated with yourself because you're going to be unable to stick to your diet, right? Which kind of you tell yourself, I'm a failure at this whole diet thing, which is very unmotivating, and then you're going to have a harder time getting back into a dietary program. And also, most diets, you'll lose weight, and then what happens? You gain it back. And so that's why a lot of people demonize insulin. It's not bad, guys. It's not bad. It's not bad. It's not bad. Okay? It can be detrimental if you're constantly bombarding yourself with insulin. So it's another key point I want to talk about with these hormones, is when our bodies are sensitive to the hormones, it reacts very quickly and very strongly. Okay? Meaning that if my blood sugar's up, insulin comes out, it stores all my blood sugar away, my blood sugar's normal, and then I go right back into burning fat as fuel. Okay? But if I'm just constantly, having lots and lots of insulin in my bloodstream at all times, eventually the cells in my body become resistant or desensitized to that chemical signal. Meaning, if I have insulin comes out of my bloodstream, takes blood, tries to put it into my cell, but my cell's like nobody home, so the blood sugar goes back in, or so the glucose or the sugar goes back into my bloodstream, and then so my body sends out more insulin, right? So what ends up happening is my body starts to reject blood sugar going into the muscles, right, which is a good thing, and it starts to push more of that blood sugar into body fat stores, okay? So then I can start, at that point, it's not necessarily insulin that's the enemy, it's the sensitivity to the insulin. The analogy that I've used, and you guys may remember this, is I had a teacher in middle school put a quarter on the back of all of our hands, start to teach the class, and then ask us if we still felt the quarter. We didn't feel the quarter because we became desensitized to that particular sensation coming into our body. So any of these hormones that I'm talking about, usually the expression of them is not the problem, it is the sensitivity to them. So the health of our cells is really, really important. If my cells are constantly being bombarded with toxins and pollutants, what are they going to do? They're going to become inflamed, which means that they're going to become desensitized to these types of things. Let's talk about the motivational hormone ghrelin and eating. Does anybody feel like they just have a ravenous appetite all the time? No? Good for you guys. Great. Have you guys ever felt ravenously hungry? Okay, we all have at some point, right? And when we feel that way, that's because we have ghrelin in our stomachs, right? Ghrelin communicates with our brain and says, go and find food. Our stomach is empty, right? So when our stomach is empty, we go find food. How do we satisfy ghrelin? Because that's one of the questions we have to ask ourselves is how can we satisfy this particular hormone? Eating, right? So one of the best ways to satisfy ghrelin is to eat. But what are the signals in our stomach? Our stomach can sense how much fullness is in our belly. So the fuller our belly becomes, the stronger the ghrelin signal is to a point. Okay? Actually, if you have way too much food, your body can't release ghrelin anymore. So we want to be able to fill our stomachs to a healthy point and not bloat or distend them. But what types of foods do you think are going to fill your stomach up the best? Proteins, absolutely, right? And even the amino acids in proteins are one of the best signals for your body to stop with ghrelin. So one of the reasons why I love high protein based diets and food is because of this exact reason. Protein is the strongest nutrient you can consume for combating that hunger hormone, ghrelin, okay? The other reason why I like protein is it's got a thermogenic effect, meaning your body has to process these foods that we eat. And proteins are a little bit harder for our body to digest. So the calories used in digesting protein is about 30%, okay? So think about it like this. If I consume 100 calories worth of protein, 30%, there's gonna be 30% energy utilization for digesting that protein, meaning kind of my net calories is 70 as opposed to 100. Okay, so protein's the highest thermogenic effect of feeding food that there is. Second is carbohydrates, which is about 8 to 12%, and the last is fat, which is about 0 to 2%. Okay, so the more protein that we consume, the better we're going to combat ghrelin through the amino acid process, and the better we're going to fill up our stomachs on a mechanical level as well. But what other foods do you guys think might be very filling to our stomach? Vegetables, right? So we're talking about fibrous vegetables.